I'm Janeane, the host of Outside the Box. Standing by is Alain Datcher, Executive Director of the LA County Youth Commission, and he's joining us now. Welcome.
Thank you, Janeane. Happy to be here.
Tell me about your role in what you do as LA County Youth Commissioner.
Well, Janeane, it's really I would say sometimes I have the best job in the world. I oversee one of the very first government advisory bodies led by and centered on youth and young adults. Essentially, what we do is we represent the voices of LA County's over 2+ million young people. Wow. Where we advise our board of supervisors and department leaders and agency leaders and community-based organizations on the issues, on the recommendations, on the ideas that young people have. And this could hit anything on transportation to mental health, to public health, to education, right? So yeah. All of these different factor areas, I help oversee and kind of build a strategy around so that we can get things done and achieve goals on behalf of our young people.
I had first heard about you and your organization when I joined one of your webinars a couple months ago. And I was so impressed with the youth that you had joining you. And one thing that struck me, which some of the adults were saying, was we're not listening. We're not kind. We're not compassionate. And what I love what you're saying is you're actually listening to the youth. What did they need? What did they want? Because I feel that in the process, we can become better humans and move out of this mental health pandemic or have better understanding of how to move forward in a positive direction.
Yeah, Janeane, I'm not sure who coined the term radical listening, but that is really what we try to practice. And, as a leader, what I've tried to instill or build a culture around is also we are obsessed with communication. We are obsessed with trying to engage our young people. We are obsessed with trying to figure out what they are saying, how they are saying what they are saying, where are the spaces that our young people are sharing their voices. And essentially what we're saying is providing a mirror back to the government and into these decision makers, into these mental health providers, into all of these communities who care about young people, but providing a mirror to say, well, guess what? Where are you engaging the young people in your midst now? What are they saying? And tell us what they are saying. And sometimes, I would say far too often, a lot of these departments don't know how to effectively engage young people, even though they have millions of dollars worth of programs and services, even though they have dozens of staff, right, dedicated to whether they're, psychiatric social workers, if you're in, DMH or the Department of Public Health, or these could be social workers if you're in the Department of Children and Family Services. We all need to be trained and engaged in ways on how do I effectively communicate to young people in order to serve them more effectively. On that panel, you heard it right, Janeane. Our young people said, I just wish you would listen, not necessarily for agreement, but for understanding.
Yes.
I wish you would listen to me and hear, and then believe me when I say I need this, or believe me when I say that I'm struggling. And the underside of this that we don't ever really talk about are these kids that are in foster care or these kids that are currently behind bars, which is also who we are going out and talking to.
Great.
It is devastating to sometimes see the ways in which these young people are just marginalized, left out of sight, left out of the public discourse around some of the issues facing young people, especially in the mental health field.
Definitely. I mean, you and I had talked another time. Imagine if somebody said to somebody, a youth, so why did you steal? And you start uncovering all these reasons like, well, my mom is a single mom. She lost her job. We don't have enough food, et cetera, et cetera. There are so many issues right now with mental health.
Yes. Well, Janeane, you when we talked about that, that analogy, I think it just sparked so many other things because that is currently what, we here in Los Angeles are dealing with, right? There is a rise in a spike in crimes, especially petty theft and felony theft. And really one of the driving factors that I've been talking to, our youth commission about, and one of our youth commissioners actually went on Fox, our local Fox channel here and spoke about this, was all of these conversations are happening, right? There's lawyers that are part of the conversation. There's the DA, there's all of these different groups. No young people. are at the table saying, this is what we think is happening.
Right.
We've just spent 2.5 years
Mm-hmm.
of disruption in significant loss. And we have not collectively mourned. We have not collectively addressed. We have not collectively strategized. We have not collectively, I would say, built the public awareness around what have we just gone through? What the heck are we still in? And how do we know we're going to be on the other side of this? Economically? Is it going to be communally? Because I can tell you our young people, because we're talking to them, this is what the young people are saying. There was an 8th grader we were talking with during one of our mental health listening sessions. And this 8th grader said, when I started, I was just about to go into, when the pandemic started, I was just about to go into middle school. So I was a 5th grader. I didn't even have a normal graduation. By the time I'm fully back in the school where, we're not having any disruptions, I'm an 8th grader now. So she has missed her entire middle school development experiences. I mean, imagine back to when we were in middle school, all the things that you just needed to know, building friendship groups,
Yes,
maybe taking a tough class, engaging with a tough teacher, all of these positive youth development, just these developmental milestones that are just missed or disrupted or non-existent.
right. There's so much depression, anxiety, suicides. Every day, Mental Health America has been posting more and more of this abuse at home. I feel that policymakers are missing an opportunity by not talking to today's youth to really understand what the needs are. I mean, it really sounds like marketing. You want to find out what the customer needs, go to the customer, listen, do focus groups, as you were saying.
Yeah, and that is the bare minimum. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Bare minimum is when we listen. That when we listen, and then we will be able to react or respond in, I think, substantive ways. You use the analogy of a business. There is no successful business that does not engage or listen to their customer. Please identify one for me, right? And so it is a piece of it that's like, we just need to just do some old-fashioned marketing research, sure, but I think more essentially we have to call to carpet this current culture and also identify what has the pandemic and all of its dual and tertiary effects, what opportunity has that now allowed us as policymakers, as advocates, members of the media to unpack, to in some cases unlearn about our young people, and then how do we respond? Those are the types of conversations we need to have, and those are the types of conversations I want to be focused on. That is where I think you'll find solutioneering with our young people. That's what energizes our young people around mental health. I am so surprised day in and day out by just how energetic our young people are when we're talking to them about tough situations around, like mental health. Like saying, how could we help support you in your mental health journey? What worked? What doesn't work? You'll hear not just listening, but you also hear, why is talk therapy the only thing we have? These are young people that are creative. They want to do arts and animal therapy, drumming. They want therapies that are culturally and gender informed for them, so that they can actually be more responsive. That wealth of service providers is preventative.
Yes.
That helps keep our young people out of potentially other harmful diagnoses like depression, anxiety, potential suicidal ideation, right? That is a preventative measure when we say we've heard you. Talk therapy isn't the only thing we should be offering. Let's go and find those services.
Yes.
And let's not define who should provide those services all the time. They may not be licensed clinical social workers, but this could be a pastor in a local Black or Brown community that's well respected and well regarded.
Exactly.
This could be a coach. This could be a dance instructor, a yoga instructor.
Yes.
And then how do we use public funding in order to fund those types of services? Because our young people want those and are engaged in those. That is where I really want us to truly reimagine what our services can be, and then put a full court press on it. Let's get those services out there. Let's identify them. Let's market those things.
Right.
And then we also got to talk about the cultural stigma, right? Because we can provide all the services, we can get those services, we can market them effectively. But then let's talk about what happens at that home. The young person might want those services, but mom or dad may have stigmas around that.
You're right.
Educationally. We got to talk about a 2, 3, 4 generational approach in some cases around mental health and why it's so important.
Yes.
And what are the other factors of why mental health aren't so important? Because I can tell you, I can't afford a therapist if I'm struggling to make sure I pay rent. That is happening right this moment. So if we do talk about mental health, we have to talk about it in a much larger context around just caring for our most vulnerable.
Yes.
Essentially, that is what we're doing. And our young people are at the center of that, because in any major, I think, social determinant of health, when we actually center our young people around it, you hit education, you hit mental health, public health, you hit communal factors. It just really drives the ripple effect across our communities. And we can say, where are our young people going to be in 2025 and 2026? That's where our solutions need to be geared toward right now.
Yes.
These are the kids that'll be in college soon. How are our universities prepared to engage these young folks now and where they'll be in 5 or so years?
Right. One thing I want to add to that is I am so concerned with the fact we have taken on, but policymakers, STEM and STEAM, but where is mental health in the curriculum? Because as I'm talking to people about this book I'm writing, and the book is Better Humans, What the Mental Health Pandemic Teaches Us About Humanity, Gen Z is so happy when I ask them, how are you feeling? What should we do differently as adults to be better and do better? And they said, where are we going to be as adults if our mental health is not addressed now? Because the push is grades in school and scores and go to college or go to this direction and you have to do this. And it's a whole mindset shift that has to happen, because again, they're talking about, if we're traumatized now, where are we going to be when we go off to college, if we even go to college, or just as adults? We're going to be traumatized adults. Yeah.
Wow. There's a lot there. I think, Janeane, one of the factors that I think you continue to highlight is the well-being of a young person is central to that family. But we also got to talk about who is it mentioned in these discussions, right? Our parents, our caretakers. How are we supporting them? Even more so, how are we supporting the teachers?
Right.
And we know, at least in LA County, 80% of our young people get their mental health services as it's tied to their educational or their community-based organizations, right? So these kids are getting their mental health through a school counselor or through a school therapist, or potentially, again, through a coach and whatnot, right? This is where their well-being is centered. What strategies do we have to support these folks? As we know, schools have now kind of taken on a different and a dual role. So not only do I need to care about in-class instruction and make sure I'm meeting these metrics, I have kids that, again, have an increased amount of anxiety or depression. They have kids that now are exhibiting behavioral factors because of, right? And how do we do that without expelling our young people, without further marginalizing or penalizing our young people for suffering in the midst of this, again, unspeakable, unknowable pandemic? No one thought this was going to be this difficult, right? I mean, harken back to it. I remember getting an email saying, we'll be back in a couple of weeks, and a couple of weeks turned into a couple of months. And then years.
Yes.
And then all of a sudden, the last time I went in my office was when I was moving. That is the story of so many different people.
Yes.
And so our young people and the families that they live in, the communities that they reside in, and the folks that they care about, we have to talk about that ecosystem. How do we strengthen that? And again, from the federal to the state to local government, what is the role that we must play in mental health as a part of a larger piece? You talked about the curriculum too, Janeane, and I think, just as we have physical education, we got to talk about mental education.
You bet.
Even as, again, I mentioned our listening sessions, and in another one of our listening sessions with some youth from Burbank, they talked about a best practice where they have non-instruction days, but the day will be focused on well-being and mental health. So instead of having, in-class instruction, they actually have teachers and outside organizations come in just to talk about well-being and mental health.
It's great.
So you're still learning, and it's still in a community, but it's one that is now centering and valuing the importance of your mental health and your well-being as a
Yes.
part of your larger learning. To me, that shouldn't be innovative. If you talk about where young people are, you'll shift your curriculum. Our young people are telling us in so many different ways, we're hurting. We are not okay. Things are not normal. So why should our approaches still be the ones that we were using pre-pandemic? We cannot use pre-pandemic solutions for post-pandemic realities.
Right.
It just won't work.
Yes.
We have to rethink, reimagine, call to carpet, and call to account these current structures that just aren't working for our young people.
Right. One thing that I keep in mind, because I do a lot of talks on science of happiness and resilience, and is to engage, to interact, to listen with whoever I'm talking to, because I feel that we need preventative education. And by that, I mean, as you said, look at the impact on the teachers who were, by the way, leaving the profession, counselors. No one was prepared for this. So if you provide preventative measures, peer-to-peer opportunities for students to work with one another, as well as go to a counselor, it's a win-win long-term. Yeah.
Yes, it is. I think, well, counselors are already, they're having these conversations. I have a really good friend, and she's a counselor out more in the Pomona area, school counselor. And she talked years ago about the struggles and the differences that she was seeing in our young people. This was before the pandemic. So these trends were already going up, right? Where there was stress around grades and stress around making it to college and social media, and those stressors already in the image management that it was taking on our young people in this profession that they were struggling and already feeling kind of pressure to do. And then you factor in other situations like our African-American communities, and there was already a high rise of anxiety, depression, and also suicides amongst Black teens especially. We weren't talking about these things, but our counselors on the front lines were seeing this. What as administrators and as policymakers, where are our ears right now? If the folks and the experts are telling us what they need, telling us where the issues are, what is the issues? What must we unpack, I guess, in order for us to then be able to provide those solutions, provide those resources? To me, it's a question of will. It really is.
Yeah.
What is our political will in order to get these things done and achieved on behalf of our young people? What's practical, and then what's idealistic? Now, will we have robust mental health curriculum in LAUSD, one of the largest school districts? Probably not overnight, but I do think that we can start to support local schools. We have, I believe, 80 school districts in our county. I'm sure we can start to encourage more school districts and build tools and build a network of sharing, right? Those are types of practical solutions we can do now in order to say, this is what Burbank is doing. This is what this local smaller school district is doing in order to help their young people. And then also, again, practice radical listening, halting sometimes in class instruction in order to just have spaces and places for young people to share their thoughts, their ideas, their concerns. That in and of itself is a part of healing. Because one thing is, we're more accountable with knowledge. With knowledge comes accountability. So I can't continue to ignore a situation that I know about unless I'm really now saying, well, this just isn't that important to us. Right. And our young people are seeing that, and they're still sharing their ideas and their thoughts. They're just not doing it in the places and spaces now that they don't feel are listening. They're not sharing sometimes their concerns or their thoughts or their frustrations at home because parents aren't listening. Being honest, right? They're not sharing them in schools because some of their teachers or administrators aren't listening. So we have to really talk about that as well. And I also think that when we practice that radical listening, what comes about that is, what then will we do with these ideas and these phenomenal solutions that young people are sharing? Yes. What is this pile of just great ideas and deep-seated needs? What then do we do with those needs other than have to build stronger partnerships, have to, again, engage the media, talk about this. This should be front and center. Yes. Why isn't our media talking about this, right? And when we talk about the reactions, but we don't necessarily, we'll talk about the rising crime, but we won't talk about the rise in suicidal ideations that could be tied to it. It's
Mhm.
just, it's just, I'll get off my soapbox, but these are the types of things that,
No, I agree.
we got to lean on our community
Yeah.
partners to do as well. Everyone has a voice in this, and everyone has a
Yes.
place at the table.
I have to tell you that during the pandemic, when I would talk to schools and say, I do talks about mental health and resilience, and I do X, Y, and Z, they said, we do that. Or our focus is academics. We have mental health day. And I'm thinking, really? Day? Like, why bother? Like one day. My point in saying this is we can't add to the load of teachers. They're already overwhelmed, but to give them a reprieve, we need to restructure the blueprint of what learning looks like. And by prioritizing mental health and letting students feel comfortable talking about mental health and engaging people to be, I want to say, like detectives, like if you notice something about your star student that's no longer the star student, to investigate that, because perhaps they have something going on at home, or they're too afraid to open up. They don't have anybody to talk to, or they're
Yeah.
hungry. They have not enough food,
Yeah. Well, again, I think you open up, I think, a larger context around, the role of a mandated reporter and how in LA County, I know my colleague, Dr. Tamara Hunter, who's the executive director of the Commission for Children and Families here in LA County. One goal that she has been highly talking about is not only the use of data and information to drive our decisions, but even more so shifting from a mandated reporter, where it is just purely kind of investigative, to mandated supporter, where you are trained to provide, hey, if I see something, now here are the wealth of supports that I already know about because I've been trained in that, not just to report the need and then kind of make sure that I've met my, my obligation, right? And the liability, I guess, of that, but more so to talk about how do we actually create conditions where this young person or the folks that you're concerned about can get the support that they need.
Yes.
That is, I think, the shift in thinking that we're trying to push for here in LA County. And, I think we've been able to shift some of the narrative over the last, year or so.
I think about, you talked about students missing milestones, and I think about what that does to their self-esteem, to their mental health, obviously, their emotional health. And I feel that this, as you said, is an opportunity for immense change, and to really listen, pay attention, and figure out how can we take what we're learning in the mental health pandemic and create positive change. You're muted.
Oh, so sorry. I just want to make sure there's no outside noise.
You're fine.
Yes. I mean, there's nothing much I can add to that, only that, preach it. I think, again, I want to reiterate that the conversations are happening in places and spaces, but we also have to go to where our young people and our communities are.
Mm-hmm.
We have to, you brought up that certain schools are saying, well, we have a day devoted to it, or we have this. That is not enough.
No.
Why? Because our young people will tell you that's not enough.
Yeah.
And like you said, it must be baked into, organically woven into how we instruct, how we care, how we discipline, right? How we hold our young people accountable, the full life cycle, and then also continue to highlight the young people that aren't here, that we don't see, which are those kids that are in foster care, that the kids
Right.
that are in these residential treatment facilities, the kids that are currently incarcerated, that, oh, by the way, are still struggling with these same anxieties, the same amounts of depression. They're exacerbated when a young person is incarcerated. They're exacerbated when a young person is away from their community, from their family, and they're in these home-like settings, but ultimately they're not home, or they don't feel at home. And so I think that is also what we must continue to talk about, as well as not just who's speaking, but who's not, who
Yes.
isn't here, and making sure that their voices at some point in time get an opportunity to be shared. If I'd like to share one closing
Please.
story. I was in a facility, a juvenile hall facility here in LA County about a month ago, and I had a chance to sit down with a young man and talk to him about who is currently incarcerated there. He's been there for about 7 years. Talked with him, just sat down, kind of like how we were, just face to face, and just getting to know who he was, and sharing a little bit about myself. And At the end of that conversation, one of the most powerful things he said was, Alan, will you come back? And will you write me? And this young man on the outside, you'd be like, he's arrested, he's committed these heinous offenses, throw away the key. But when we got there and we got face to face, this was a man who wanted to do better. This was a man who was in tune with his mental health and knew about some of the traumas he had faced and the adverse childhood experiences he had faced. And what he wanted was community. What he wanted was a sense of connection. What he wanted was someone who could believe in him. And I think that is at the heart of how we support our young people. It's not radical. It's not radical to say, I will support a young person no matter their circumstances. I'll be here to support them no matter their circumstances, and to reiterate that. So that's the type of culture that we're building. That's the type of community I'd like to continue to push towards.
It's amazing. I know we have to wrap up. Where can people find out more about you?
So you can visit our website. It's youthcommission.lacounty.gov. That's youthcommission.lacounty.gov to learn more about the Los Angeles County Youth Commission. We're doing some phenomenal work, again, continuing to advocate and meet on behalf of young people. So please, join our listserv and get connected to our work.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for calling into the show.